I'm going to step off, and we are on YouTube now, so whenever you're ready.
Okay. The HR committee meeting of March 9th is now called to order. Let's just take a moment of silence. Amen. And I'll turn it over to Kay and staff.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, we would like to ask for approval of the January 12th, 2023 minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, the ayes have it.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is any old business. Does anyone have any anything from any prior meetings or any questions or issues they'd like to discuss?
The one thing, and it may not be for this meeting, but perhaps on another meeting, I'd like to talk a little more about career ladders, similar to what they're doing in stormwater, to see whether or not there's something, and Kay, you and I talked about this some time ago.
Yes, sir.
I just want to sort of flush that out some more to see whether or not other departments would be able to use the same approach that stormwater is taking.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Can certainly do that.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything else that would fall under old business? Okay, if not, let's move on to new business. And Becca is going to present our staffing and retention report. I think by this time, everyone should be familiar with this report. We started doing this, I think it was sometime maybe beginning of last year or maybe even year before, when Ryan kind of put all this together and then Becca took it over. But anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becca and let her share the updated information with all of you.
Thanks, Kay. So we will jump right into actual staffing levels. One thing to note for these compared to our last meeting is that our last meeting was year end. So we were looking at positions and vacancies as of December 31st, whereas now we're looking at them from January 1st up until the last day in February. And that's just to account for the new positions that have all been added in as of January 1st of this year that were budgeted for 2023. So with that being said, as we go into non-sworn, we're sitting at 288 vacant FTEs, and this is a decrease in 17 vacant FTE positions since January 1st. And then when we look at police, we're seeing
just quick question. Does that mean that we hired 17 positions?
No, we
Yes.
hired, oh, I'm sorry,
but
Becca.
oh no, I think Kay and I were probably on the same page. Yes and no. The kind of on the front of it, it looks like 17. We decreased by that number, but it's actually a total of 17. So if we had people leave and brought people in, it's that combined number that makes that up. So
Okay.
plus or minus a few, depending on what we had that month.
Okay, I think I got it. Yeah.
Okay. So for police, we're looking at 40 vacant FTEs, and that's an increase of 5 vacancies since January 1st. So one thing that you can see on this screen is that non-sworn and fire have both decreased their vacant positions, whereas police we're seeing an increase, and that's mainly because they really didn't have a whole lot of new positions being added in January 1st. So this was really just looking at any people that have left versus positions that they have filled. And then when we look at fire, they have 29 vacant FTEs, and this is down 16 from last month. And this is because they brought in their fire recruit class in February.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions
Yeah,
about this
I-
slide?
I do, please. Thank you.
Okay.
When is our next recruit class for both fire and police? Do we know, and do we have an anticipated number? Are we getting close to hitting that mark?
I believe the next recruit class is July. Lindsay, am I right about that for fire? And then police, they don't really have, they don't all start at once like fire. We end up having 3 or 4 people start at a time. So they are ongoing in our orientation classes.
Okay, so there's a potential we could be in a pretty good situation for fire in July. I mean, I don't know how we anticipate how many we're going to lose, but I guess looks like we'd be in a pretty good spot, I think, if all goes well in July. So,
Yes, I would agree.
okay, thank you.
Mayor Tecklenburg?
So just to understand the chart, you show that little on the top dotted line, how it goes up a little bit. So there's 288 vacant positions, but we have more positions now than we had just 2 months ago, correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So how many, we had a net decrease in 17 vacancies, is that right? Is that one way of saying it? Because you took into account the increase in positions, the loss, the people that left, and we obviously hired a lot more than 17 if we ended up with a net 17 loss.
Yes, sir. That is correct. And when we get later into the presentation, we'll show you exactly how many people we hired
Okay,
in January and February. And it is definitely more than 17.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay.
So with that, we'll move into staffing levels. So this is really just looking at percent staffed. So for our fire, we're sitting at 93% staffed. And then for police, they're sitting at 91% staffed. And then our non-sworn, again, is sitting at 76% staff. And relative to kind of the previous months that we've shown, this has seemed to hold pretty steady, plus or minus a few percentage points. And does anyone have any questions about this, or can I go to the next slide? Okay. Since I can't see anyone's video, but I'll take silence as
Yes,
that I'm
yes.
good to go.
Yeah.
I'll ask a question. So I remember from my commercial real estate days that if you had a shopping center, for example, and it was 96% occupied, you would say in effect you had full occupancy, because you always have a little bit of turnover, is there some kind of acceptable standard or some kind of standard percentage you get to 95% and HR officials can say that we're in effect at full occupancy or full complement? Does that make sense?
Isn't it somewhere around 8%? Okay.
Well, when I look at, I think what's acceptable generally for turnover would be, I think an 8 to 10% turnover rate would be kind of normal and what you would expect, but I don't know if there's any particular number that you would have to reach to consider it be considered full complement. I would personally, I'd be pretty happy if we could get to 90%. Maybe here. I think that would be a great number to shoot for, but obviously 95 is better.
Yeah. But you know, you're at 90 with police and fire and 93 with police, so you're knocking on the door.
You're right. And I do, police.
Could you pull up pull up the last chart for me? Because that's really what we're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, right. There we go.
Yeah, police and fire have actually been doing pretty well the last few years. And so you're right. And I apologize. I probably am. My focus has definitely been more on non-sworn because that's where we've had the significant issues in recruiting and the significant turnover issues. But you're right. If you combine fire, police, with non-sworn, I don't know, Becca, can you give me a quick percentage overall?
Total, when we're looking at all, I think we're hovering right around 83%, 83% staffed. So again, obviously non-sworn brings that down a little bit, but
Great. All right. Thank you.
And just so that I'm clear, if I look at non-sworn, right, between January and March, we had an increase. Am I looking at this correctly, the graph?
yes. So just based on what we can fit on the graph, February is in there. We only show every other month.
Sure.
So in January, as you can see, we're sitting, I think around 74%. And then in February, we increased to 75, and now we're sitting at 76%.
Okay. So there's some progression.
Slow but sure, Councilmember Gregory.
Okay, there's progression. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now we will move into turnover. So this slide is looking at total turnover through February of each year since 2014. So for that, as we can see with fire, we're sitting at 1.14%. And when you're looking at that compared to really their history, that puts them on a good pace. I think there's only 1 year that they had, or I guess 3 years that they had less than that, and they were all right around that COVID timeframe, which we kind of see deviate slightly from our average trend. And then when we look at police sworn, they're sitting pretty much the same as they were in 2022. So in 2022, they were at 2.21%, and now they're at 2.15%. So a slight decrease, but holding relatively stable. And then for our city non-sworn, last year at this point, so in February, we were at 4.72%, where we've seen a pretty significant decrease this year, sitting at 2.12%.
And what do you think is the reason for that?
Well, I would definitely attribute for the non-sworn, part of it being our increases. So the COLA and the pay plan adjustment, I definitely think has helped.
Okay.
I would
That's
agree.
what I was hoping you'd say that, but go on. Go on, Beck. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Does anyone have any questions about this slide? Okay, if not, we can move into our projections for the end of the year. So I'll start off by saying too, this is looking at annual turnover for 2023. So we're looking at a projection based on the amount of turnover we've had this year. So it's only based on 2 months data at this point. So as we kind of meet and get more data month after month, we'll see this become a more accurate projection of what we're looking at ending up at the end of the year. So to start with, if we're looking at fire sworn, they're projected to be at 6.13%, which if you're excluding 2020, because that was, again, COVID, an abnormal year, this would be their lowest turnover since 2014 by a pretty significant amount. And then when we look at police, they have increased. So their projected annual turnover is at 14.2%. 4 or 5%. And again, this is where we get back to, this is only based on January and February's data. And one thing that we saw with police is that we didn't have as many people in police leave in the end of 2022. So people that would have left in November or December, the data kind of points out that it looks like they stuck around and then chose to leave in either January or February. And we're thinking that's attributed to them leaving after the COLA and the pay plan adjustments went into effect, because then they get a larger leave payout.
And so you think that's the reason why this turnover rate is the highest in, wow, some time, isn't it?
Yes.
For
So
police.
if you look back at the past couple of years, so at the end of 2019, in November and December, we had 6 police sworn people leave. Again, in 2020, we had another 6. In 2021, we had 11. Last year, we only had 2 in both of those months.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas when we're looking at that kind of shift in the first 2 months of this year, we had 9 people leaving, which we're thinking that's kind of where that came from. So
Okay.
of those 9, we did have a few people in that were retiring as well. So again, when we're thinking about leave payouts and what your final salary ends up being, you know, if they do the quick math, it makes sense for them not to leave until after they had those increases. So it's definitely something to keep our eye on as the upcoming months. But I think once we have kind of additional months of data, we'll see that should trend back to the historical average.
Yeah, which is around 10 or 11%, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
One thing before we leave this slide, I had emailed fire because Councilmember Shealy had asked about the recruit class for July, and the turnover made me think about that. They said that so far they've gotten 405 applications, which is really good
Great.
for a class that'll, start in summer.
Mhm.
I had one more question before we leave this slide, if you don't mind. Do we ever look at when at the number of people at fire and police when they're eligible for retirement in our projections?
We have a report that can do that, that we pull from PIBA system. We have to marry it up to our system because it just gives us raw data. It doesn't tell us by department. But when we saw this uptick with police, we had this conversation as we were looking through this data, that it would probably be helpful for us to share that with them about their people who are, and you can run the report through PIBA, people who are within 5 years eligibility of retirement. And I feel like, I haven't looked at the numbers to support this, but I feel like we've had more people in police that are retiring when they're eligible compared to years past where they might have worked beyond that 25-year mark.
Yeah, I know in general conversation, just out and about, sometimes when I'm talking with some of our police officers, they may be off duty or whatever. I mean, I'll get an answer back. I won't even ask them. They'll say, yep, I got 2 years and 3 months left, then I can retire, So I think it is important data for us to have because just like you said, I think more are retiring when they're eligible and then possibly going into doing something else. So.
And that's what we find most of the time when we talk with them, that they're taking a job, a lot of times in the private sector, sometimes at the federal level, but a lot of time private sector, and then drawing that full retirement check and making a salary ongoing.
Okay,
What's the average age of our workforce, and what percentage of our workforce is 65 and older?
I feel like the average age, we looked at this with Aon last week, and this was people who were benefits eligible, but I feel like it was in the low 40s. Is that what you remember, Kay? Like 42?
Yeah, I think it was, but that's not a complete picture because it is people who are benefits eligible. So that it wouldn't be our entire workforce, but I don't think even if we looked at the entire workforce, it would be drastically different from that number.
So are we saying that 40% of the workforce is over 65?
No,
No, I don't think so. Our average age is 42, but we could look at that.
Right. And I'd just like to know what percentage is over 65.
I think we did look at that last year at some point, and of course, it could have shifted slightly. We can easily update that number, but I want to think it was maybe 100 or so employees that we had that were 65 or over when we looked at it at some point last year. Councilmember Gregory, it's definitely a a smaller percentage of our employee base, because as Heather said, the average age is in the early 40s.
Okay, and the
So
reason
that'd
why
be about 5% or so.
sure, and the reason why I asked that question is, Kay, because it would be relevant to our question with the David Rosenberg on supplements, Medicare supplements. We talked about a little earlier.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And before we leave the slide too, I just want to point out, I mean, I certainly hope that, our hope is, and we will keep a close eye on it, but we definitely will hope that police will kind of level out and get back to more of their normal. But I am optimistically encouraged by the fact that our 2023 projected turnover for non-sworn is 12.43, because as you all may remember, we ended up close to 30% turnover for 2022. So I'm hoping we can, I know it's only 2 months of data, but I'm kind of hoping that, well, I am hoping that we can stay closer to that number. Even if we rose a few points to even 15, that would be basically cutting our turnover numbers in half compared to last year, which is a good thing. So unless anyone has any other questions about this slide, Becca, I think you can move on.
Okay, and I will turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to give us our recruitment update.
And I don't know if all of you have met Lindsay Mazzell. She is our recruitment coordinator. We thought, since our focus is really, we're so heavily focused on recruitment right now and trying to fill positions, we thought it might be helpful for you guys to meet her and for her to provide some additional data on kind of what's going on with recruitment for these first 2 months of the year. So for that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay.
Calling Lindsay.
Lindsay.
Lindsay, you might be on mute.
Uh-oh, if she's not having computer trouble.
Lindsay, you want to come to my office? You're welcome to. When all else fails, we can do this the old-fashioned way.
There she is.
Hi.
Are you having computer problems?
I'm not sure. I was not on mute, so I'm sorry. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but Becca, if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be great. So as you can see, this is a view of our job posting views and applicants. If you look first, you'll see the number of postings are in the blue line. Versus how many people have actually viewed the positions that we have posted. A lot of times we see people that will look at a job but may not actually actively apply to the position. So number 3 in orange is how many people actually did apply to those job postings. In February, we had 408 jobs posted. 65.2 thousand people viewed those postings, and a little over 1,069 applicants did apply. So if you can look at the historical data here, we're definitely moving in the right direction of more clickable views, more applications for people that are interested in our positions. Through the career fairs that I'm doing in the community, we're definitely seeing a lot of that is attributed to the COLA and the pay plan adjustment for 2023. Any questions on this slide?
Just
Councilmember Gregory, I'm sorry. Were you saying something?
yes. what did we do in February 22 to get that increase like that? I think it's February.
There was, I know that there was a large, adjustment. I definitely can look into that, to find out, that larger statistical change in postings and applications. We did also, I believe, have another fire class in February, for, more hits or more, postings and, applications.
It would just be interesting to see if we did something slightly different or whatever, because it sure went up. And if we can use the same approach now, because that's not when we had all of our increases, right?
No, sir, our increases were this year, but there was
Exactly.
some other bonuses from last year, and I believe it was in February of that year.
Okay.
Additionally, we had updated the sign-on bonuses for some of our CDL positions that had not previously had sign-on bonuses or increased them as such. But I certainly can dial into that data to get some more information for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, any other questions about this slide before I move on? So this is looking at the conversion rates and the average applications per posting. So if you see that the average application for the posting is the orange line, and in January we had an average of 2.36 applications versus the postings in February, where we increased an average of 2.62 applicant postings. Because of the average applications is a function of how many people we are looking for, we also look at a conversion rate. And this is how many people clicked on the click to apply after looking at the position. It's a percentage of the people that ended up applying to the job, as you saw in the previous slide. This rate is held relatively stable around 1%. We saw a slight dip in the end of 2022, but again, most people aren't applying for jobs during that time with the holidays. And then of course, in January, February, we have seen that number increase up to 1.4% and 1.6% respectively. I believe this is just measuring the job attractiveness for pay, bonuses. So the 1% conversion rate for every 100 people that look at the job, one applies. So that conversion rate is definitely increased in a positive light.
It's just not quite where we want it yet, right?
Not
What-
quite.
I mean,
Little
where would we want that rate to be ideally? Is there such a rate?
So a good just benchmark to shoot for is 10%. I would say we're kind of getting there incrementally. So I think a good hallmark to shoot for 2023 would be sitting around 3%.
Agreed.
Okay, and we eventually want to get to 10. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on this slide? All right. So now that we have NeoGov, which started September of 2019, we had a whole year of data last year, and of course, going into this year of applicant source tracking that we did not have in previous systems. As you can see on this pie chart, you've got it broken out to different ways that applications are coming in. Through NeoGov, NeoGov utilizes governmentjobs.com and scrubs those jobs onto Indeed, among some other smaller function positions. But the majority of our applicants are still being driven to the city website, which is wonderful. I thought it was a great increase to see that we have folks that are listing a friend as a source. A lot of that is going to contribute to, and these are people that have applied, not necessarily got the job. In January of this year, we did have an increase for the referral bonus, where in the previous year, We had in January, we had 0 referral bonuses given, where this January we had 9. And that is also attributing to good people know good people. So that's a great thing to have as a referral bonus. For LinkedIn, I've utilized LinkedIn for some of the higher level positions, but not for all. LinkedIn has bound to be very expensive. I'm expanding to postings into other sites as well. But just kind of a nice overall glimpse of where our sources are coming from. Any questions?
Yeah, just wanted to ask, all right, so you've got 892 there for city website, but do you think any of those are, how are they getting to that city website, I guess? I mean, are they just Googling something? Are they going through Indeed or LinkedIn and getting to that site? Are we seeing a duplicate there, or do we know how they're getting to our site, I guess?
I certainly can look into more drilled down information, but they're getting it through any type of link that would go to the city website. I think large portion of that is because the way that our system is set up, NeoGov has a career posting site that is linked to our website. So people that are seeking out governmentjobs.com versus going through an avenue, like you mentioned, to go to the job posting site through our website. So there's many avenues for sure, but I can drill down into that and get that back to you as well.
Okay, great. And do you know, like when we use Indeed, they have enhancements that'll put you at the top of their page. Do we ever use that, or we just do the basic type ad? Or
the partnership with NeoGov and Indeed is for the basic. Unfortunately, NeoGov has canceled their relationship with posting additional highlighted jobs on Indeed. We're very excited with the next system that will be able to expand that. But for now, we're going on to these sites and manually posting some of the ones where we're seeing weaker response from applicants to make sure there's more visibility for those positions.
okay, great. I know in my business, I use the enhance for Indeed and ZipRecruiter, and it makes a big difference when I enhance. I mean, I get 10 times the number of applicants when I use that enhance, but there's certainly a cost to that, and it's not cheap to do. But so I was just curious.
Right. I mean, alone, I know that we've spent a lot of money on LinkedIn, and other sites are very comparable. So we're looking at and monitoring that with our budget very closely.
All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
All right. Any other questions on this slide? All right, great. Let's go to the next one. So here's a comparison of the same time frame from 2022 to 2023, looking at job offers. This side probably is the most exciting slide because we are sending out more offers to not only more people, but more departments. So across the span of several departments in divisions that you can see. Any other questions with that one?
I mean, it looks like stormwater really shot up, and public service just shot right on up there, didn't it?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We were seeing a big response with the sign-on bonuses, and the pay adjustment, and the COLA is really making an impact in those divisions for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide? All right. So just kind of to give you an outlook of the recruitment plan so far. Recruitment job fairs are very seasonal, and so March is a very busy month. I attended the West Ashley High School job fair yesterday, and really enjoyed meeting with over about 200 different students that chose to come to the career fair. We have the Black Expo that's this weekend that we're going to have several tables coverages for not only jobs, but I think that police, fire, and housing, and procurement will also be there as well. The Higher GI Career Fair, Tri-County Job Fairs. This is a 2-day event that's next year, where the different schools, they actually bus in the kids for a portion of the job fair to learn about what careers they could go into. I talk a lot about our summer openings. Part of it is a veterans fair along with that. So it's a really great fair. Last year was the first year that I participated with that one that was offered coming out of COVID. And there were several people that came to that. College of Charleston job fairs. These, the main one is going to be in March, but then they have ongoing pop-up ones for internships, summer, and career interest type job fairs to give college kids an idea of where they could go next for their first job at a school or some summer part-time type positions. And the Small Business Expo, that's also coming up. Ruth actually stopped by today and she's getting everything ready for it and got a lot of exciting things with that fair. But the most exciting job fair is the one that we're hosting our second annual. I can now say second annual. Last year was the first one that we had where all departments participated with the table and it was interactive. And we even had a police car, a police motorcycle that was in the Gilliard and Parks. We had Jason Kronsberg sitting on one of their power mowers. So it was a great event. So we're gearing up for that. I've already been sending out some marketing on that. And then other recruitment efforts kind of more behind the scenes. We are routinely meeting with departments to go over their current openings versus their PCN report to find out, are they sitting in requisitions for openings, and making sure that they're staying on top of that so that we can make sure that positions are getting advertised and backfilled as quickly as possible, as well as recommendation for any other job title change or any kind of creative piece we can talk about with recruitment efforts. In addition, we're, like we mentioned before, the job highlights we're putting out through different avenues, including Facebook, Handshake, which is a site that goes out to all U.S. colleges. And then I've also utilized Canva to do a lot of department-specific recruitment flyers as well. So it's ongoing. But any other questions about these recruitment efforts?
Yeah. Do you measure whether or not there's a bump in the applicant pool after these job fairs?
Yes, we've done this before, and we did it with a job fair where we were actually able to see as a referral source how they found the position and including that as the job fair. And so NeoGov is definitely affording us the ability to track a little bit more on the source of these candidates to see if an event is successful to attend or not. So that's definitely an ongoing effort.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I see Mr. Mayor has his hand up, though. I don't want to jump in front of you.
And Councilmember Shealy, too.
And I can't see either.
Oh, Lindsay, I see you mentioned the Higher GI Career Fair, and I just wanted to share, and maybe you could do a little more research, but when I went to the U.S. Mayor's meeting not too long ago, there was a short presentation by the Department of Labor in conjunction with the Veterans Administration about, hiring veterans. And it sounded like they bring people to you, you don't have to go to get them. And then also there's another program that was mentioned for military spouses. Now, oftentimes they're only on duty for 2 years. And so you might only get, you might not get a long-term career employee that way. But oftentimes the spouses of active duty military personnel are looking for employment when they come to Joint Base Charleston, for example, for 2-year duty. And, you know, that we might have an excellent employee for 2 years. Anyway, both of those kind of veterans related programs, I think would be worth doing a little more research on and seeing if we can connect with them.
Absolutely. I will definitely look into that.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Shealy?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, wanted to mention, I know I'd mentioned this to Kay about a month ago. I had visited Trident and their apprenticeship day that they had, and they had thousands of young people there for this apprenticeship situation. And certainly it's a part-time start, but they told story after story of people who walked into a full-time job after doing this apprenticeship and how much it helped those companies and corporations. So I just thought it's a thought that we may want to look at to see. I know that the city of North Charleston was there, the city of Goose Creek was there, and Charleston County was there. There may have been other municipalities as well. I'm not sure, but they were actively recruiting the apprenticeship. So you know, just thought I'd throw it out there as an idea, and you know, and see if we may work that as well.
Shirley, we have participated with that in the past, and I can think of somebody that a similar story where they were an apprenticeship in IT, and we ended up hiring them when they finished their program, and they moved up through IT and were a good employee for us. Sometimes we've ended up with a few people that maybe they weren't too focused on the schoolwork and it didn't work out, because you do have to maintain a certain GPA to be an active member. And so I know we had one of those kind of hiccups, but it's certainly something we could take a look at, because we have had some success with that in the past.
Okay, great.
Well, and Councilor Shealy, after you mentioned that to me, I did reach out to Mindy Sturm, and she did send out an email to all departments asking if there would be interest. You know, so I know that she has met with some people with that program. I just don't know what kind of response she got from departments as far as those that might be willing.
And Mindy and I had a conference call with the company as well. So we've got some information on that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I think it's great that you went out to West Ashley High School for the job fair. You know, attached to West Ashley High School is the West Ashley Center for Advanced Studies, and you may have seen some of those kids. A lot of their students are West Ashley kids, but they also come from a couple of other high schools. But they have certain things that I don't know if major in is the right word, but you know, I have a child that's actually getting a medical designation or whatever if she completes all of her classes. But there's several different things that West Ashley Center for Advanced Studies several things that they have that I want to call majors. That may not be the right term, but they certainly have a concentration in, so that they can walk straight into a job with that, you know, with that training. So so I just wanted to mention that as well.
Absolutely. There were a number of the early childhood education students that were there. I'm assuming it's from the same program, but I can look into it. And they were very interested in speaking with me, primarily for the summer camps to be recreation leaders. So we're hoping to get some applications from those efforts.
Great. Well, thank you. And I use Handshake also in my business, and I know that they have job fairs at University of South Carolina is one of them, but they're Georgia Southern and several other schools that are within our region too. So that's awesome.
As a follow-up, we have an intern program, don't we? Earned internships.
Yes, sir.
And those internships can go a year or more.
Well, we have interns that are budgeted through Mindy Sturm's office for the summer. But then we also have a number of departments that take up the opportunity to have an unpaid intern. Internally, we have in our department, Paul for Wellness has unpaid interns to get educational credits. But then some departments have also had paid interns if the budget makes sense within the department. So it's definitely something that a lot of departments have embraced, that internship mentality to give exposure to young people that are looking for a career.
Have we ever sort of dissected that and tried to expand it? Because it's definitely a good way to train younger folks and have them to be hired eventually if they can, meet our criteria. I got in HUD through an internship program. And for me, it paid off substantially because of all the on-the-job training that I had, and having senior folks take someone under their wings oftentimes is a really good way for us to shore up, quote unquote, our recruitment efforts by having internal folks who want careers in engineering and stormwater and housing or whatever. But I'm talking about an actual program where we set aside a specific amount of dollars to formalize such a program, not just a summer thing, not just something that has to be paid for by another entity, but actually have a dedicated source of funds specifically for us to have our own interns that we train in our various departments to take the place of people who are retiring. It's just a great way of marrying the old experience with someone new and younger who can sort of carry things on. Just something I'd like for us to sort of talk about a little more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Councilman Gregory, I do know that it's not, I guess it's not as much a formal program but departments do often budget, within their budget for interns. And I can think of a couple of departments, the public information department has had great success with interns. I can think of two who came to work in that department as interns who we ended up hiring and, became, great employees. And even going back years and years ago in human resources, I can think of two employees who they did an internship right after, while they were with the College of Charleston, completing their master's degrees, one of them actually ended up being, the director here, John Atkinson, he and Greg McKenzie.
I'm another one.
And and Heather. Heather was actually an intern, here when she was doing her master's program as well. So it can be very effective. And I think that, certainly as I've seen, we've had some great success stories, but I as far as having a formalized program where it's all of that money we budgeted in one pot of money, as opposed to being budgeted in the individual department, that would probably be more of an Amy question to see how that could be, what would be the best way to do that. But
we're in the same place. I know that it's going to take a bit more vetting. But I definitely think it's something that we need to sort of just look into because as you just articulated, it works.
It does. And again, those, create a very long-term employees. Now, Heather did leave us for a while and go to work for the state, but, she eventually came to her senses and came back.
Thanks.
Anyway, all right. So any more questions about this slide?
Nope.
Nope. Lindsay, do you have anything else for us? Is there another? I can't remember. Questions? Thank you, Lindsay.
I think we sort of did that along the way. The questions.
I think we did too. I think that's the best way to do it, actually.
I do too. Is there anything, what else is on our agenda after the presentation?
That's all I had other than other business. If anyone had anything else.
Well, we've already talked about, the possibility, depending upon our conversation on this Medicare supplement issue. So we can do that. We can flush things out when we have the conversation with them to just determine if it's something that we can do.
Yes, sir.
And if so, let's just have that on our agenda at our next meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
absolutely.
Is there anything else to come before this committee, Mayor?
You know, I just want to say thank you to, you know, to Kay and Heather and Becca and Lindsay. I mean, this is a great meeting. Vacancies down, turnover down, staffing's up. I mean, and everybody's working hard to continue to improve it. And I just want to say thank you for your work. So appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Councilmember Shelby.
Ditto.
Ditto.
Thank
If
you.
not, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
You're here.
Moved and properly seconded. This meeting's adjourned. Thanks again, Kay and staff. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.